Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Pamela, Jouven, and it is my pleasure to welcome you today for this session focused on SMEs, the SME Climate Hub, and supply chain decarbonization. Thankfully, I won't be doing all the talking today. We have an incredible lineup of speakers, corporate leaders, nonprofit leaders, all of whom are implementing collaborative and innovative approaches to engage SMEs in their networks and their supply chains to help them reach net zero. We'll have a series of rapid fire presentations from Netflix, EDF, Mars, the Exponential Roadmap, but also a panel of experts from across the Middle East and North Africa region to discuss the specific challenges and opportunities that SMEs face in this part of the world. Now, before we move on to the presentations, please allow me to say a few words about the hub. I know that many of you in this room will be familiar with this initiative, but just as a reminder, the SME Climate Hub is a global initiative hosted by the We Mean Business Coalition, launched in partnership with the Exponential Roadmap Initiative, the United Nations Race to Zero campaign, and in partnership with Normative. We offer SMEs, we provide them with a one-stop shop platform where they can find all the tools and resources they need to start their journey towards net zero. This includes a credible climate commitment in line with science that allows them to join the Race to Zero campaign, but also tools completely free of charge to measure their emissions, take action, and also report their progress to us, but also to a variety of stakeholders in the ecosystem. Now, today, SMEs account for 90% of businesses worldwide, 70% of the world's workforce, and 50% of global GDP. So it is fair to say that there will be no net zero without SMEs. And tools are not enough. We know that SMEs face specific challenges. They don't have the time to take action, the skills, the knowledge, the resources, the funding. And so we need to ensure that collaboratively we create a conducive ecosystem for SME climate action, which is the reason why the hub collaborates with a variety of stakeholders, of partners, both at a global level and at a local level. At a global level, we've been working with multinationals who have SMEs in their supply chains, but also financial actors who have SME clients, with governments. And one of the partners we have is Netflix, who's represented today. You'll be hearing a presentation from Emma, and I'm delighted to announce that with Netflix, we are today launching a series of action courses specifically targeted at SMEs and the TV and film production industry. This is the first time we're launching sector-specific resources with the hub, and you'll be hearing more about these new resources. But we've also been collaborating with local partners, of course. We know that it's very important to reach SMEs where they are, to tailor our narrative, our resources to the reality that these SMEs face on a daily basis, which is why I'm so happy to welcome Hanan on the stage. Hanan is the head for private sector engagement in the COP28 team, and we've been collaborating with them on a Mena campaign that she's going to tell you a bit more about. Hanan, please.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hanan Saqr. I head the private sector engagement team for the COP28 Presidency. And I hope that you're all enjoying week one, and we want you to be strong and supportive as well to us and to the COP28 for week two. I'm so happy actually to be talking about SMEs, and I think this is, if not the 7th event that I'm talking about in SMEs, whether it's between the blue zone and the green zone. And there are so many others happening this year as well, which demonstrates the importance of SMEs when we are talking about the global climate action and the global stock take and how we want to be fixing the gaps when it comes to climate actions. So why the SME Climate Hub for Mena, and why did we as presidency choose to be focusing on SMEs this year? So if you have noticed as well that the COP28 presidency is very inclusive. We're really bringing everyone to the table. Government, policymakers, civil society, academia, and private sector. And having that this is in the DNA of the UAE, the business and we have a lot of corporations. We are a global and regional hub for different corporations around the globe. And hence this becomes very natural to talk about these topics and to include the different segments of the businesses into the conversation for climate action. So we see that we are focusing on startups, on SMEs, on the family businesses, on the large corporates, so which is very magnificent for this COP. And I think this is one of the differentiators of this COP as well. So when we have looked at the SMEs, and I think that the SMEs are sharing the same challenges when it comes to climate action around the globe, and the Mena as well is similarly facing the same issues as many parts in the globe. To start with that, SMEs, they don't have easy access to capital finance, conventional even before climate finance, the ESG information, and the limited resources in their tools. And hence, when we looked at the SMEs in Mena, we found that they represent around 80 to 90% of the businesses of the private sector. They account for around 10 to 40% of the employment, and their emission is around 50 to 70% of the private sector. So it was our responsibility to provide a transitional infrastructure for the SMEs free of charge to kick off as well the transition of SMEs. And when we looked, we wanted the SMEs as well to be adopting global campaigns, credible campaigns. And then we thought of the Race to Zero. After looking at the Race to Zero, we find the SME Climate Hub, and we said this is the right partnership in terms of providing the right type of information we want to the SMEs, the tools, and as well it's aligned with the strategy and the outcomes of the COP28 presidency. And having that we are short-term team, we wanted as well this to remain as a legacy for the COP28 and to remain to serve and grow for the SMEs in the region. And hence, we decided to collaborate with the private sector, and we were very selective in that. So we have collaborated with Masdar, which is one of the biggest global clean energy developers in the world. We have collaborated with First Abu Dhabi Bank. Why First Abu Dhabi Bank? It's not just because it's the biggest regional bank, but because it's one of the only two G-Funds banks members in the region. And as well with Abu Dhabi Chamber, because we wanted this network. We want as well the business mentality, not just to be advocating for SMEs in the UAE only, but they have the leadership in the region as well. And we did not stop there. We wanted as well to be collaborating at a country and national level in the region, and our aspirations as well were global. We launched in October, so there was little time to do much. But in this little time as well, we have created what we call the campaign champions, and the campaign champions are our government and national partners. So we have went to Mena in Egypt, which is the National SME Authority. We have collaborated with them. Mohammed Sadis Foundation of Morocco. We have Shibrai of Brazil in order to bridge between COP28 and COP30. We have the UAE Ministry of Economy. All of those champions as well, they have their own green initiatives in country, but they're having a challenge in order to mobilize these green initiatives and to fix the gaps in the ecosystem of sustainability, which is capacity building. And this is exactly what a platform like the SME Climate Hub is providing to them. This is why it only takes one call with any of these organizations to explain to them the hub and to have them join the hub as partners as well. So this is pretty exciting. We have only started as well with the limited time capacity building for around 25,000 SMEs in the region. But we're really looking forward to do more post-COP. We have trained the trainer program as well. So as the presidency or the SME Climate Hub team having the limited capacity, we're not expected to be talking or training for 1 or 2 years to come. We have the trainer program. We want these countries as well to be able to be educating the SMEs and to share the knowledge as well. So we're super excited. We still have much more to do post-COP. There is a big plan that we want as well to replicate this success geographically and expand into other countries as well and to more SMEs. And the second one is to add functionalities as well, not particularly on the platform, having the nature of the NGO and the non-commercial nature on the platform, but perhaps it could complement others in country that we are going to explore in order to maximize the benefit for the SMEs. Thank you so much, and we're really looking forward to have you at COP28 for week 2. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanan, for presenting this campaign so eloquently. And I very much look forward, of course, the whole SME Climate Hub team very much look forward to collaborating with all these local partners, even after the COP28 summit, to ensure that we can engage SMEs in the MENA region. But without further ado, I know that we have a packed agenda, so I would like to move to, well, our first panel, so to speak, but it's going to be a series of rapid-fire presentations from all these amazing leaders. So please let me welcome on stage Emma Stewart, Sustainability Officer at Netflix, Elizabeth Storken, who's Managing Director at the Environmental Defense Fund. Please come and join me. Kevin Rabinovich, Chief Climate Officer, NVP for Sustainability at Mars, and of course, Louise Rabinder, Director at Exponential Roadmap Initiative. Welcome all, and thank you very much for making the time for this event today. So I think the idea for us is really to get to know you better, understand more about the very innovative projects that you're all implementing to engage SMEs in your networks to help them reach net zero. So if that's fine with you, I would like to start with these very quick 3-minute presentations so that the audience can understand a little bit better the work that you do. And I suggest that we start with Emma from Netflix.
Sure, thank you so much. Is my mic working? Yes. So 6 months into joining the company, and this was my first 6 months in the entertainment sector, I had a lot of learning to do. But in 6 months, we were able to measure the carbon footprint. We actually did 2 different years since the COVID year was such an idiosyncratic year. Have it audited by an outside auditor, set an SBT and get it verified, and then put out an ESG report. It was a busy 6 months. We're now delivering against 2 climate targets. One, the SBT, so having our emissions by 2030. And then in addition to that, we committed to invest in the power of nature to retain carbon for all remaining emissions across all 3 scopes, starting in 2022 and for every year thereafter. So those really are our 2 North Stars. In order to hit that first decarbonization target, quite an extensive analysis showed us that we have 4 levers, and really only 4 levers, so we don't have a lot of latitude in order to hit that mark. The first is the first fuel, energy efficiency, so often overlooked. The second is clean mobile power. For decades, diesel generators have powered the making of all film and television and games that you love. And then third, to source renewable energy, electricity, but also fuels like sustainable aviation fuel. And the fourth is electrify transportation. Now, when we got interested in We Mean Business's SME Climate Hub was when we looked at our Scope 3, which is the majority of our footprint, and we realized that it's a very long tail of SMEs. So purchased goods and services is our biggest category by a wide margin. There you have a couple big companies like advertising companies, advertising through social media platforms as one example. So we can work with the Metas and the Googles of the world who are steadily chipping away at their own emissions, but it quickly drops off into SMEs. And so that was when we realized that asking these 10-person companies to set an SBT was like speaking in a foreign language to people who don't have time to speak to us. And so we instead decided to set an intensity target for Scope 3, which essentially meant we were taking responsibility for the measurement and reduction of their emissions rather than putting the onus on them. And then we approached We Mean Business and we said, look, we need your help in reaching a much broader swath of SMEs to help them understand some of these new technologies, but in particular, electric vehicles and clean mobile power, these alternatives to diesel generators. So as Pamela mentioned, we launched this week the first such sector-specific action guides for SMEs. And our hope is that they'll be really useful for us, but in particular our peers in the entertainment sector, and frankly anyone who works with the supply chain in transportation.
Thank you so much, Emma. That's all great to hear. And obviously, you know, Netflix has been acting as a leader in this space, and we're very grateful that you decided to work with us also to support the rest of the industry, because all of this requires collaboration, which I think is a perfect segue into Elizabeth's own presentation about, I believe, supplier cascade and how we can all work together across the ecosystem to align frameworks and commitments.
Thanks, Pamela. I'm honored to be up here with this panel of leaders. I'm Elizabeth Sturken. I'm Managing Director of EDF Plus Business. It's not an understatement, of course, to say that what we do in this decade, this decisive decade, will set the stage for the rest of this journey towards net zero and how easy or hard it is. It will have impacts for generation. And I know from doing work with companies for over 25 years that many companies want to act, but they don't know how. And more than anything, we need companies to act now and not wait. I know there also is a lot of pressure for companies to measure and report emissions from CSRD and coming regulations in the United States, voluntary standards, and that's good. What gets measured gets managed. You need data. This guy will emphasize that. But we've kind of run out of time. We need to do all that, but we need to start acting now. And you need to start acting now on Scope 3. So therefore, the Supplier Cascade, which is an initiative with that EDF working with the leadership of We Mean Business, a series, BSR, and CDP in collaboration with SBTI is creating. And it's I've created a new acronym for this. I don't know if they're going to like this, but it's Commitment, Cascade, Consequences. So first, make a credible net zero commitment aligned with science. Second, start a cascade by asking all of your tier 1 suppliers to do the same. And report, number 3, report progress on targets and supplier action annually. That's the consequences of acting. It's a simple, easier way to act on Scope 3. Scope 3, a lot of companies say, well, we can't act on it. The data isn't clear. It's really challenging to understand where our emissions are and how to do it. We don't have direct control over those emissions. But the truth is, you do have a lot of influence with your tier 1 suppliers. So that is the idea here, is that you start this cascade and you create results. And really, it's an action-oriented and practical approach, and it really focuses on where companies have the most control. And the other idea is, we shall see, but I hope, we really do hope that this drives transparency throughout the supply chain about where the emissions are. And the more transparency means more action. So it's focused, measurable, straightforward. What are the next steps? Quickly, we are trying to gather companies that want to be early adopters. They'll have access to support from NGO partners, be invited to contribute to the development of guidance, and have the opportunity to participate in discussions. So we're looking for early adopters to try out this approach. Finally, I really want to end with emphasizing that Yes, act now, and there are resources out there to help you. If you're an SME, the SME Climate Hub is amazing. If you are a larger company, EDF just launched our Net Zero Action Accelerator, which is netzeroaction.org. It is meant to take all of the best of what EDF does, our science, our policy and markets expertise, and help companies prioritize action, working with partners like Race to Zero, Deloitte, Exponential Roadmap, and others to, again, just help companies figure out what to do, and the people inside companies, sustainability, finance, procurement, prioritize the right things. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And I know that at the Coalition, we're very excited about this new campaign and approach, which in a way demystifies Scope 3 emissions, right? As you said, it's an action-oriented approach that allows companies to act on what they can control and see how this can trickle down supply chains. So thank you. And talking about supply chains, we have here another pioneer when it comes to supplier engagement, Mars. So Kevin, would you like to tell us more about what you're doing at company level?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Excuse me, Kevin Raminovich, Chief Climate Officer at Mars. We're a 30+ million ton greenhouse gas footprint business, and that's Scope 3, everything you could possibly imagine included. So 96% of that is not our Scope 1 and 2. And most of that is upstream of us. So most of our footprint is somewhere upstream of us in the suppliers, a little bit downstream with retailers and transport. And so basically, we're not going to make progress on our goals unless we have some sort of a discussion or engagement with our suppliers about how they can contribute to our work. And so the one specific thing we've been involved with and actually helped launch in 2019 is something called the Supplier Leadership on Climate Transition, SLOCT, L-O-C-T. A little hard to catch the acronym there. And basically what that is it's a boot camp to help suppliers get through the process of learning about this whole space, doing an inventory, set a target, well, actually do an inventory, develop some strategies, and then set a target. And basically you come out, the aim is to come out the end with an SBTI approved target. And so we, and originally one or two other companies, and now I think we're up to 25 companies, have been asking all of our suppliers to do that. I think we're now up to 700 suppliers, many of whom, of course, are shared across some of those 25 big businesses. And so we're very excited about that. We're very pleased. Two comments about it. One, it's setting a target, which is great, but the climate's deaf. It doesn't hear our targets. It doesn't care, right? You've got to get to actually not even having a plan and not even spending money. You've actually got to get to reducing your emissions. And the second thing I'll say is, in the context of SME, I think this programs like SLOCT are probably better for the M in the SME and maybe less relevant for the S. If you're that sort of proverbial 10-person company, going through the paperwork of doing an SBTI, disclosing the CDP even, probably doesn't make sense. I think the burden and the responsibility of some of that needs to land on the bigger companies in the supply chain that have the overheads and the chief climate officers and some of the resources to do that. And as we get into the S's and maybe even the small M's, it should just all be about action and measuring results and measuring performance, and don't worry about the paperwork. This is heresy. Maybe don't even worry about the targets. And our job is to figure out how to reward and motivate and incentivize. And so we have, like most businesses our size, we have tens of thousands of suppliers. And I think really the opportunity for SMEs is a lot of our larger suppliers have infrastructure. They have committed ways of doing things. They're kind of locked into however it is they do what they do. They built their factory 30 years ago. If you're a SME side of things, you haven't built all that infrastructure yet. So you have the opportunity to build a more future forward-looking supply chain. And I think that actually creates, in many ways, SMEs are disadvantaged competitively against their larger competitors, but this is actually an area where they have an advantage, is they have less lock-in to some infrastructure that is a problem for some of the big incumbents. And so I think that idea of how do you lean into, I can build it better because I'm not hooked into an old way of doing things is something we're interested to explore and is an incentive that, I think SMEs need to keep in mind. So.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Lots of lessons learned there that obviously, the audience has benefited from today, but thankfully you're not the only leader in this space. There are other large corporates who are really working hard on engaging their suppliers. And so I'd like to give the floor, so to speak, to Louise. Louise is an integral part of the SME Climate Hub team because, the Exponential Roadmap is a co-founder of the hub. So we know the work that Louise and team do very well. And among other things, you work with the so-called 1.5 supply chain leaders on supply chain engagement. So over to you, Louise.
Yes, thank you, Pamela. And yes, we work very closely together on SME Climate Hub. I am a big fan, not only because I actually work with it and try to take it forward, but also that I've used it because I come from telecom sector. I work at a company called Ericsson till not too long ago. And I was working with supplier engagement. That was my big task there. And what Emma said, there's a long tail of small suppliers. There is really a long tail of small suppliers. And if we're talking about SMEs being more than 95% of the global, a lot of companies, for companies themselves, it's the same. They have a lot of SMEs in their supply chain. And then Elizabeth says, yes, we should ask all our suppliers to have set their targets and so on. All our suppliers, that is like 19,000 suppliers. Should I work with 19,000 suppliers on supplier engagement? That is massive. And for that, you need to have great tools, because if you can communicate to these suppliers, then you want to have a no-touch or a low-touch flow. You want to have as little communication as possible. Sadly, you'd like to talk to each and everyone, but you can't really. You don't have those resources. So then we have something called SME Climate Hub that we can communicate so that they know of it. They will have tools for calculations, reporting, tools for actually knowing what to do when they also reduce their emissions, which is great. Because also thinking about, well, it's hard for a company to communicate to their suppliers, but think of the supplier when they get the message. They also have to work. They need to have it easy. It's not easy when someone comes, especially a customer, that you get money from, saying, well, please set a target. Then we have this SME, maybe a 50-person company, it's not too many resources. They need help. We need to make it really easy for them, and that's why SME Climate Hub is really great. So that is how I worked at Ericsson, and I know a lot of companies work like that. And what I did there, I didn't really distinguish actually if it was an SME or a larger company, but we made sure to get the information out. So if you're a large company, you can use these resources. If you're a smaller company, medium size, you can use SME Climate Hub. But then there are other ways of working. We're working with many large companies and institutions on trying to engage SMEs. And we have the example of BT, which I think is really great because they have worked not only that they are promoting SME Climate Hub or promoting that their suppliers and SMEs should have targets, but they've been working with the UK government. So then we get this message coming from different directions, not only one customer. It's also great when we have collaboration, when many customers are saying the same thing, please set targets. I think SMEs or any company need to hear it from many directions. And then I have a final example, and that is just recently we have a bank in the Nordics that is called Nordea, and they have obviously many clients that are SMEs, providing loans to these clients. And they published recently that they have this pilot with net zero commitment loans. So if you have a target with SME Climate Hub, then you get more beneficial terms when you are having a loan with Nordea. But it's not the commitment that is the most important thing here. It's that it's integrated with the reporting, because Nordea obviously want to see that you're doing your things, and then you have this report that you have to do if you're part of the SME Climate Hub. But then they're also concerned, of course, with the SMEs getting support so that they can do the reporting, that they can do the reductions and so on. And then we have these tools for knowing how to work with reducing emissions. So that last part here, when financial institutions are coming in and from their perspective also asking SMEs to commit and set targets, I think that's a great piece of the puzzle.
Thank you so much, Louise. I know we only have a couple more minutes for this panel, so I first wanted to check whether there are any questions from the audience. Please.
Thank you so much for the interesting panel. My name is Rami. I'm from Egypt, from a steel producer company. We do produce steel from recycled scrap. So I just want to comment, with what Elizabeth was saying, we do see challenges for demand on the green products. We know that there is a transition for many products to go green, but still even for small products or a small portion of production that is already green by nature or by production process, let's say like someone is doing some wooden stuff, and is only doing it from recycled wood. So they are not going into trees or forest or whatever. Still, we cannot see that the customers, they don't give any priority for him. Same goes for my steel, for example. I do steel from scrap, and this is by definition and by nature will today and always will be the lowest carbon emission by elimination, because you don't have a big production process wherein you do need to reduce the iron oxide by carbon or carbon derivatives. So still, at least a priority, not even a price differentiation. And this is something I do believe we all need to work with, like, policymaker, platforms, NGOs or whatever. We have something on the table, but still all we are looking very far away, and we skip this small opportunity. I would love to hear maybe some comments from the panels.
That's such an important point. And two of the things we encounter in our supply chain is a lack of availability of the clean technology, and then significant premiums. Okay, so take those in order. When it comes to availability, the first thing we did, perhaps naively thought it would have an effect, was we sent letters saying Netflix would like this, right? So that's kind of the most tepid market signal you can possibly send. That actually did get kind of filtered up to the boardroom, or if in an SME, the small president or the president of the small organization, but it doesn't do much for the company. The next thing we did was, well, how about we guarantee you a certain amount of business, so that you can switch over the technologies. Because if you're a 10-person shop who brings a truck and a diesel generator to a studio, you want and are perfectly economically motivated to run both of those pieces of equipment until they die. Right? The economics are really very much in that favor. And so we wanted them to see the incentive for switching over. So a minimum guarantee deal is one way of us saying you will get preferred treatment if you're able to find that. And then the third is a premium. So we are willing to pay premiums. But when we see the availability increase, then you're talking about premiums across hundreds and hundreds of locations around the world. So that starts to get extremely expensive. So the last thing we did was we said, you know what, this isn't moving fast enough. We reached out to Rocky Mountain Institute, a nonprofit many of you will be familiar with, and they know their way around technology incubation. So we said, no one has noticed, but our sector is entirely reliant on diesel generators, as are the events, construction, sports, disaster recovery. Imagine the irony of rolling in a fleet of diesel generators after a climate-fueled disaster. And yet there are technologies that are good alternatives. We've piloted 200 of them. We know they work, but they are not available. And so we brought to Rocky Mountain Institute through a grant, we invited Disney to join us to show that this was open to the whole industry. And we launched what's called the Clean Mobile Power Initiative. So now they've selected 10 companies who will be cultivated, coached, connected with financial capital so that they can scale artificially fast and supply our industry with those clean alternatives at a reasonable cost.
Thanks so much, Emma. I know we're going to have to wrap up soon, so I just wanted to check whether Elizabeth and Kevin and Louise want to add anything on the importance of engaging directly with suppliers and SME suppliers, including through incentives, market signals. Maybe one or two sentences each.
Yes, there's a lot of reason to act, not the least of which business opportunity, right? Or business risk if you don't. And there are a lot of ways to act, right? A purchasing preference, like Emma's talking about, companies can choose to write into their purchasing specifications environmental criteria, social criteria. That's the basic floor. There's a lot of incentives too. Everyone's a race to the top, hopefully. The United States finally stepped up with the IRA, and others maybe will follow on the incentive side. So there's a lot of real momentum here. I guess my final message, other than act now, is the tools are out there for guidance on what to do and how to do it. And the SME Climate Hub is an excellent example of that.
Yeah, so not every SME is part of the supply chain of a large company like Netflix or Mars, but a lot of them are, right? And for the ones that are, I think the answer here is pretty straightforward, which is the broader community needs to hold big businesses like us accountable for delivering absolute GHG reductions in line with our net zero commitment. So lots of companies like us have made commitments. Not as many are actually on their way down. And by driving that accountability, it creates an internal problem for us. And then all those SMEs that want to sell us recycled steel or whatever are solving a problem for us, as opposed to bringing a problem to us, which is a premium or limited supply. And that then motivates things like the clean mobile power. But again, that's got to be something where it's not happening because there's a few enlightened businesses that want it to happen. It's got to be something where every business that has been relying on diesel generators is desperate to get away from them. So that's my answer, is drive accountability on us to then motivate the use of the tools and things like Elizabeth talked about. But it's got to be painful for us. The current state has to be painful for us so that you're fixing our problems.
Louise.
And I love that question and that you're bringing it up, because it's incredibly important, because those are the solutions that we are going to want to have there. Those that are not that type of solutions, we don't actually want them because they're too demanding on the climate, of course, and nature. In the SME Climate Hub, you can actually note that you are a climate solutions company and what you do and how. However, that is not enough. It needs to be better advertised, and I agree. We're working at Exponential Roadmap Initiative. We're working with climate solutions, trying to define what it is and trying to ensure that comes up on the table much more. So I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards about that. I think I may end it there, actually.
Absolutely. Thank you for this, because obviously we loved having you here. Thank you so much for sharing all these, insights and experiences. Please feel free to go back to your seats in the room, because I want to make sure that we have enough time to hear from our second panel of experts from across the MENA region. Thanks again to you all. And so I'll be calling our next three speakers to the stage. Shargil Bashir, Chief Sustainability Officer from First Abu Dhabi Bank. Please join us. Arab Hobala, Executive Director at SEED, and Nadia Rojdi, Head of Climate at Emirates Nature WWF and the UAE Alliance for Climate Action. Welcome all. We're going to try and cover as much as possible in the time that we have. And I wanted to start with Nadia. As you will have understood from Hanan's introductory remarks, we have been working closely with the COP28 Presidency on a campaign in the MENA region. And so we thought that this would be a great platform to hear more about the specificities of this region and how we can best achieve impact in the MENA region. So Nadia, let's start with you. Obviously, you're in a privileged position with the UAE Alliance for Climate Action. Can you tell us a little bit more about the state of play of supply chain decarbonization in the region and how SMEs are involved?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. We're the WWF UAE office, so super excited to be here talking about decarbonization. We launched last year at COP27 what we call the UAE Alliance for Climate Action, which is part of the ACAs, the Global Alliances for Climate Action, which are a contributor and accelerator of Race to Zero and contribute to the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action. Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak sits on our advisory committee as well, so we get a lot of really great insights from her on non-state actor acceleration of decarbonization. The alliance itself is really about two key things: is collaborative action for climate action. And essentially, we've been working really hard over the last 12 months to engage our members, let's say, which are non-state actors, universities, municipalities. But again, huge component of it is a private sector, and a lot of them are SMEs. A lot of them are large businesses. But essentially, I think what I heard today from my colleagues is exactly what's happening here. 85 to 90% of their large companies here, supply chains, are with SMEs, no difference there, and are in scope 3. And so for us, I mean, it has been about really listening this year about what are the challenges that they've been facing and contributing to solutions to do that. We're an enabler, right? We're not a company, or we're an NGO. And for us, it's really about creating the enabling environment to help them do that. So the state of play seems very similar. I think the tools are probably not as available. So it's really great to see the SME Climate Hub come to the MENA region. And that's, again, what we're trying to do, is provide the tools and capacity to be able to deliver on that. So how we do that, for example, over the last 12 months, I think I've heard a lot of, my colleagues here about action, right? Especially in SMEs, kind of almost forget reporting at this stage, just drive action, right? And I think one of the things that we've been super clear on is that action that's not reported, that's not SBTI, doesn't get recognized. And I think for SMEs, that's huge, because they're working really hard and they don't have the resources to do that. So just a couple of days ago in our Panda Pavilion in the neighboring kind of space, we launched our On Track to Zero dashboard, which is really about trying to help give that visibility to those who are doing work that are not SBTI or Race to Zero. So helping them identify through kind of we got inspired from the SBTI dashboard, have they baselined their emissions? Have they reported on scope 1 and 2 and 3, or have they calculated it? Are they engaging their supply chain, and how many of those suppliers are engaged? Because that's kind of a soft signal to the market to say, we might not be able to say SBTI, but we're progressing. And I think that's super, super important. So we've done that, and we've officially launched that this week. We're going to have all the organizations. We have 50 members so far in the Alliance, and we're going to be highlighting that on our dashboard so people can track their progress and see that there is a lot more momentum that, proves to be seen in the MENA region. Yes, we know, and my colleagues here, have signed up to SBTI, but, let's also give a kind of a clap to those who are progressing. And the last thing I will say is we also launched another initiative yesterday, or the day before yesterday, sorry, which is our Road to Zero initiative. And it's about, one of the things that we baselined is understanding how much transportation was featured in the supply chain of our members. And obviously the movement of people and things is everywhere, right? And so one of the things that we did was try to get our members to sign on to decarbonizing their transport in their fleets, and not only in owned assets, in lease assets, because that's their scope 3. And actually a lot of the members that we engaged with hadn't even considered doing the kind of letters, the procurement policies, the signals to the market to say that we'll buy from you if you're giving us green technologies or zero emission vehicles in this case. And so we launched that, and we had 15 signatories say, okay, yeah, we hadn't thought about lease transport. We'll commit to that, and we'll make aggressive targets towards the medium term and the long term to make sure that we're decarbonizing our owned, but very much our leased transport. So that's been super exciting in seeing how we can also enable scope 3 emission decarbonization through supply chains of the S and the M's and also the L's.
Thank you, Nadia, for depicting so eloquently the momentum that already exists in the MENA region. We do know that this makes a huge difference when it comes to SMEs. So seeing momentum at local level is definitely one of the success factors of some of the campaigns that we've run in other regions, other countries. And so great that the same thing is happening in the MENA region. And talking about organizations who are taking action and playing a key role, I think we can turn to Shargil from First Abu Dhabi Bank. So in addition to being one of the key partners of the COP28 and SME Climate Hub for Mena campaign. First Abu Dhabi Bank is a lot of things. So they're the first bank to commit to the UAE's net zero target by 2050, and also to become the first green lender in the MENA region, which is fantastic. Of course, you work a lot with large corporates as well, so it would be great to hear from you how you're working with these bigger clients, large corporates, to encourage them to pursue supply chain decarbonization, including with SMEs.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the three things that are very important for us when we are supporting either the large corporates or the SMEs on their decarbonization journey, which is basically about raising awareness, it's about having the right products to offer to them, and it's about creating incentives. And of course, I can walk through one by one. And raising awareness, I think SME Climate Hub is a great way to raise that awareness, because previously, when we spoke with the SMEs about starting their decarbonization journey, they don't have the privilege of having sustainability departments, CSOs, etc. So what can we do to give them the easy access to the tools they need? And that's where SME Climate Hubs plays a very, very important role, because we can, ensure awareness. We have some specific tools that can benefit them. From a product perspective, what we've done is with the large corporates is we launched earlier this year the sustainable supply chain financing, which is basically where we are asking the large corporates to say that across your supply chain, you're using 100 SMEs as an example. Why not give them some incentives here to say, if they start doing their ESG reporting, if they start their decarbonization journey, you're gonna lower the price to them specifically. And in some cases, those costs are the additional cost that is covered by the large corporate and us in combination. So we give them those incentives specifically, and we've seen very, very high demand on the pilots we have run. In one of them, we had around 100 SMEs, and what we saw is that in the first 6 months, we saw more than 70% of them meeting those KPIs specifically. So they got that benefit, and then we discussed with the remaining that what were the obvious challenges they faced, and for a lot of them, it was the lack of awareness. So we are trying to support from that perspective. So we're trying to find a way that how can we work with the larger corporates to create these incentives, because they realize, as it was mentioned previously earlier in the panel, that it's such an important part of their supply chain that they need to support. And we need to create those financial incentives for them as well, to ensure that there is a benefit from them, this part as well. And from awareness perspective, it's extremely important for the SMEs to know as well. We've had multiple awareness sessions about green procurement, to say the larger corporates are moving more towards green procurement. And if you're not able to show your credentials and what you're doing in the ESG space, you might not even get invited next time to be a vendor for this company. So that's also an important part about understanding how the dynamics and ecosystem is moving from a large corporate perspective as well. So that's the way we are trying to engage with the larger corporates, but also the SMEs, and trying to build them together. Last year, we did almost 3 billion dirhams of financing to the SMEs specifically. We're also working, because I think the question I often get from the SMEs is, oh, will you provide financing to us, because we are finding such a big challenge to find financing. And as I often tell them, there's never been more financing available for SMEs there is right now. That does not mean that every SME does get financing. I fully recognize that challenge, but we have a value chain that can offer that financing from multiple different places. We have incubator, accelerators, we have guarantee schemes, we have funds that have been established to support SMEs, we have the commercial banks who are there. For the larger ones, we have development banks supporting as well. So we have a wide of opportunities, and again, it comes back to raising awareness, because a lot of SMEs are not aware about all these different opportunities that exist for them to go and find financing to support them on their decarbonization journey and the change that is required. So I think bringing those things together, those collaborations are extremely important. And I think that's, again, a very good example for the SME Climate Hub that can bring these different partners together to support on that change that is required.
Thanks so much, Shargil. Really interesting to hear about all the work that you're doing. Very excited about the financial incentives that you're offering as well, because we know that this is a big, big piece of the puzzle. The vast majority of SMEs in our community want to take action because they feel it's the right thing to do, but they need to understand that this is going to have a positive impact on their bottom line as well, hence the importance of incentives. And I love the fact that you mentioned incubators and accelerators, because this is a perfect segue into what Arab is going to tell us about his work with Seed. So the amazing thing with Seeds is that you really work at grassroots level with startups and entrepreneurs, so very small players really. So Arab, can you tell us a little bit more about the specific challenges and opportunities that these small players face?
Thank you very much, Pamela. You know how much pessimistic I became. I hope I will not be the negative note at the end. We are all mentioning here the issue of net zero and focusing mostly on emissions. If you allow me, this is the big mistake we are making, because we will be putting figures, but we will be focusing the social component of it. So it has to be very clear. Net zero is not only about emission, it's about lifestyle, it's about social issues, it's about employment of women and youth. Otherwise, there will be no net zero. Second, I have the privilege, I have been with UN all my career, promoting the program on sustainable consumption and production, which are unsustainable, as you know, and they remain unsustainable. And if we don't change our consumption patterns, and we don't involve adequately the small and medium enterprises that are equal stakeholders, I don't think there will be one objective of this conference like previous ones that will ever be achieved. That's why I'm very pessimistic, and I have facts to prove that. Now let me come to the program we're doing. We're effectively working since 20 years now, directly on the ground with SMEs, deeply rooted in local ecosystems. And unlike what most people say, we need to educate them, no, they educate us. We have been learning with them what they need, what their innovation were about, and then step by step, learning with them how to take them to the next level. So we have to be careful, not coming, as I had done it when I was with the World Bank, coming to developing countries and teaching them everything and forgetting about their local knowledge. Please, innovation is not the prerogative of big companies. And I would say from experience, the best innovation, the ones that will sustain and survive, are the innovation done by local enterprises deeply rooted in local ecosystem, because they do it for survival, so it will succeed. While a big company can do it here, they fail, they go next place. So let's keep this in mind. Now, how we work with them. We accompany, this is an extremely important word, we accompany the small and medium enterprises. And we work on what you call the eco-inclusive innovation process. So for us, it's not just business. What do we do with the society? How you preserve the environment? How you look at the resources? They have all to be taken all together. We have a very tough selection process, mostly in Africa and Asia, where the things are happening, and where the change will happen or will not. And we try to see what they need, where they are at the level of startup, or go to next step, help them developing their business model, help them to become financially literate, because they don't know how to approach a bank, but at the same time, work with the banks to have them to become SME literate. So it's not one side, it's two sides. The other one, you refer to the procurement issues. I can tell you there is hardly any country in the world, I might be missing some, that in the procurement process gives some specific consideration to innovative small and medium enterprise. They cannot compete with the big companies. We should forget about that. So there should be somewhere specific criteria that as an incentive to bring in the small companies to enter the market. Otherwise, it will remain for the big. And this, I don't know many of them that exist around the world, not even in Europe, who are much more advanced on that. So once you accompany them, you try to make them not visible, recognized, valued for what they do. And that's what we have been doing in trying to give them a voice. The SMEs do not have a voice. You don't have many of them here talking and sharing their challenges and the success stories. So it's something absolutely fundamental. Give them a voice, and by giving them a voice, I cannot do it alone. Pamela cannot do it alone. We need to bring the different UN agencies and different partners to at least sit together and give a voice to the SMEs so that they can express it, say their rights, and move ahead with that.
Thank you so much, Arab, and thank you for reminding us that SMEs are also climate solution providers. So they're agile, they're nimble, they can really join this effort wearing a variety of different hats. They don't only need to be the beneficiaries of all the support programs that we've been mentioning until now. They're really a part of the solution, and I think it's very important to remember that there also needs to be a bottom-up type of approach. So I know that we're short on time. I want to make sure that we can go through a second round of questions, maybe with short answers, 1 or 2 minutes. And I wanted to go back to Nadia because we've been talking a lot about collaboration here, how different players in the ecosystem need to come together to create this, conducive playground for SMEs to take action. So can you tell us a little bit more about governments here? So the type of policy changes that you'd like to see in the UAE to facilitate this type of change?
Well, I mean, I thought I was passionate, but going after Arab, it's honestly, mabruk on what you do, because I really did think I was going to be, being able to be passionate, but I think you take the cake on that one. Look, I think on policy, we listen to our members. If I speak on behalf of UACA, the UAE Alliance for Climate Action, we listen to our members first. We ask them, what challenges are you facing? And when they do relate to policy, then we are a forum where people can share, and we have had really good experience and good kind of case studies in sharing the knowledge and the data with the government to be able to indicate where the kind of signals are and what needs to shift. So we always do that. Next year, we have a couple areas in which we're going to work on policy, so mostly zero emission vehicles, as well as renewable energy and distributed energy. But again, at the same time, it really has to be SME and company-led and non-state actor-led. So we're here to listen and aggregate and share where possible. And that's essentially what we do. And I think the last comment I'll make, I think, I've seen SMEs probably be a lot more, and I'll go back to what was talked about before, be a lot more aggressive than even some of the large companies. So I also think we cannot discount what they're doing and say they need, the support. I've seen them do what Netflix was talking about before, the letters to, and think about these SMEs, they have little control and little influence on their supply chain, right? Large companies have little control, but they have way more influence. I've seen SMEs be extremely passionate, and this is not about those that are providing the solutions. They're about completely, music industry SMEs, completely different ancillary industries that are like, we're going to do this because it matters. We're gonna write the letters. We're going to indicate that we're going to, only procure from these guys. We're going to work with our suppliers to give incentives when they're not even given the incentives from the large companies. So I would say that actually there's a lot more progress than is to be seen. And I think that's the reason, again, why we went back to this point of we need to highlight the good case studies, because they are happening. It's just that they don't have the resources to be that vocal about it. And we want to be that voice piece for them.
Amazing. Thank you, Nadia. Shargil, I'm going to go back to you. So, of course, we've heard a lot about how all these SME stakeholders can come together to collaborate. From your experience, how's the best way for these different players to come together really to have impact, especially when it comes to supply chains and SMEs?
I think the obvious one is, of course, collaboration. Collaboration is key. We're working with multiple large companies. We are working with Masdar to look into, again, to what can we do from a green procurement perspective? How can we urge other large companies to come together, set kind of an agreement that can be the level playing field for all the SMEs, to say that, these are going to be the future requirements, to support them from that perspective, at the same time providing incentives. And then I will mention public-private partnerships, right? I think in this region specifically, public-private partnerships are really, really strong, works extremely well. So I think a mixture of those two are extremely important to really mobilize the what is required to get the SMEs supported in this transition that we are all working towards. So for me, collaboration, public-private partnerships are going to be the key to make this transition happy.
Thank you, Shargil. And last but not least, Arab, we've been talking a lot about innovation, scaling, all of these approaches, supporting SMEs. How do you think corporates in particular can support this movement?
Without designating the network, I've been discussing a couple of months ago with probably one of the largest network of big business. I was invited to their board. I explained to them what I have been saying here, and they wrote to me, please, how can you come? How can we work together? Because an eye-opener. We want to work with SMEs. We pretend we want to work, but we don't know how to do it. Now, you have to change your approach. So we need to scale up, but we need to scale up by using the right parameter for that. You cannot bring the SMEs in an existing market that has never recognized them and cannot value them. So there is a change in the system has to be made. One of them is the funding. Public-private funding, but it has to be blending funding, public and private, that absolutely allocates a certain amount that goes directly to what I call low-cost innovation by small and medium enterprises. The big problem is that, and I've been discussing a couple of days ago, another event with big financiers, they know how to give $1 billion, but they don't know how to give 10,000. So you can have 5 times billions. I can tell you it will not have the same impact as if you take 10% of this billion and divide it in 50,000 for small and medium enterprises. The multiplier effect will give you a much higher benefit than the 5 billion by the companies. Neither the governments, nor the UN, nor the private sector has understood. Why? Because, as one minister told me one day, they are too small, too many, we don't know how to work with them. So it's a mindset that we need to change. And we need to scale up and bring those together, but by changing their mindset. It cannot be business as usual. You cannot work business as usual with SMEs if we want to achieve what we are pretending doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Arab. And as you can see, your passion has definitely rubbed off based on how much people are applauding in this room. Unfortunately, we don't have the time for questions from the audience, but if you're able to stick around for a few minutes, maybe some of them will come to you to ask a few questions. And in the meantime, I want to make sure that we can welcome our very last speaker of the day on stage, Chris Rowe, who's Director of Worldwide Carbon. Thank you very much to you all. Worldwide Carbon at Amazon. Amazon is a very important partner of the SME Climate Hub. We've been working with the Climate Pledge for several years now. So please, I'll let you close this event with a few remarks.
Thank you for the last word here, and awesome panel. Appreciate the time here. Great to hear what's happening with SMEs broadly, also here in Mena. I'm Chris Rowe. I lead our carbon work at Amazon, and we co-founded the Climate Pledge in 2019, which is a commitment to reach net zero carbon by 2040, 10 years ahead of the Paris Agreement. We now have over 450 companies that have joined that commitment, including over 60 SMEs, which is not nearly enough to get to the scale of impact that we're talking about. So we're really excited to grow that community. The Pledge has been a supporter of this work for a long time, since day one. And it's important for Amazon in particular because over 75% of our impact and our net zero commitment is in Scope 3 in our supply chain. And this last year, we've announced that we are going to be working with suppliers to find solutions, drive action, and inspire and mobilize SMEs, but also large partners that we work with to take carbon reduction goals in the coming years. So more to come on that. Hope you had a great COP. Thank you, Pamela, for an awesome moderated panel discussion today. I'll end there, but thank you so much for the time today.
Yes, if the speakers could kindly join me on stage for a picture. We've been instructed by our communications team. Thank you all for